Today I'll be going over a guide for the heroic Razsageth fight, specifically for Beast Mastery hunters. I couldn't find any guide whatsoever for Beast Mastery specifically, and I think it's kind of important that each spec has their own guide that kind of tells you when to do certain abilities and how to deal with mechanics as that class. There's a couple key talents that Beast Mastery has that you're going to want to take, one of them being Wailing Arrow. That is a AoE interrupt and an AoE damage ability that's going to be important in phase 1.5 of this fight. I would also recommend taking the talent that makes Survival of the Fittest on a shorter cooldown, but it still does not increase the damage that it mitigates. There's some abilities in this phase of the fight that are kind of important, especially for hunters. Right here you can see that she casts these bombs on you. When they explode, you're going to take damage. You also have a slow on you, and the bombs themselves do proximity damage to the raid. So you're going to want to put those as far away from the raid as possible and use a defensive. I would recommend Survival of the Fittest since it's a shorter cooldown and it's not your immunity. You're going to need your immunity later on in this fight. Those bombs drop puddles on the floor, as you can see right behind me. When the boss does her Hurricane Wing pushback, she pushes players back, and you will get knocked off the platform if you don't go into one of these puddles. Common misconception is you don't stand in the puddle, you stand in front of it and you get pushed back into it. Well, not quite. You want to stand in the puddle, not far in, barely in. You won't take damage from the pushback, and you will not get knocked back twice into the puddle. You see that vignette effect around the sides of my screen? That's how you know you're in the puddle. This is the third ability that the boss is going to cast, and she spawns 2 adds at each player that need to be interrupted or the shields need to be broken. That's why you're going to take Tranquilizing Shot and Counter Shot. Those are your 2 single target interrupts that you're going to use. I would take Intimidation as well. It's just another interrupt, and that's going to help a lot during this fight, especially on phase 1.5 where you need those interrupts in order to deal with some of the casters that are in that pack. The boss will phase at 65% here. So we didn't use Lust in the beginning, and there's an important reason for that, and I'll get into that when we get to that phase of the fight. And like I said, those bombs do proximity damage to the raid when they explode, so you're going to want to take those as far away as possible. That's why I used Aspect of the Cheetah right there. There's a way to cheese this pushback, or this knockback mechanic right here that knocks you onto the next platform using Disengage, but as you can see, I used it just a second ago to try to get to the platform because I thought I was running out of time. You would disengage right before you hit, and you would take no fall damage. So this big ad is going to spawn smaller ads, Oathsworn Vanguards, and Stormseeker Acolytes. The Acolytes are what you're going to want to interrupt using Intimidation, Countershot, and Wailing Arrow. I use Wailing Arrow in the beginning to try to interrupt. Another important mechanic here is baiting the breath. So the breath tries to hit as many players as it can every single time. So keeping a larger group back while your tank and maybe 1 DPS go forward to try to start getting some uptime on the ad will cause the breath to blow behind you rather than on the ad you're fighting, and you'll lose uptime doing the DPS and trying to avoid the mechanic. You're going to want to kill these guys as fast as possible. The longer you stay in this phase, the more vault integrity you're losing, which is more uptime you're going to have on the boss on phase 2 of the fight. On the third and final pack of enemies, you're going to kill them and be teleported via the teleporter to my left onto the third platform, second phase of the fight. Phase 2 has some pretty cool mechanics. It's basically the same as normal. You're going to have the plus minus, positive, negative Thaddeus mechanic that you're going to have to deal with. There's one thing that's very different in this fight, though. When you get the mechanic, you will see a blue ring spawn around you. Players can't see your blue ring, they can only see their own. If a blue ring touches yours with the opposite charge, you and that player will both take damage, and the raid will take some damage. So you're going to want to stagger your movement a little bit. Have the people with positive run first under the boss, let them get out of the way, at least so you can see clear path to get to the negative spot. And you're going to want to use your combat potions here. Your elemental potions of power is going to help you break through that shield longer or faster. Another ability she's going to do is Tempest Wing. It's a pushback. It's not as strong as the first pushback. It will knock you off the platform if you're about halfway, and I would recommend getting as close into the boss as possible. See, I barely moved there. This prevents you from being knocked back off the platform. You can also jump. Jumping helps when you're that close to the boss because you kind of jump over the ring that does the damage to you. If you just stand in it, you're going to stay with the ring as it pushes back. You're going to continue to take damage. Another ability that happens are the fulminating charges. Those are the big blue circles that go out on 3 players. You need to get those out of your raid. However, the people that get the fulminating charge will have an 85% slow, I believe. I don't remember the exact number. So it makes them harder to move. So what we do is the entire raid that does not have the circles goes to the opposite side of the boss while the people with the circles move back away from everybody else. Because when the circles explode, they're going to do damage to the raid and big damage to the player that has it, as well as having a dot on you while you have it. And when they explode, if there's another person within the circle gets transferred to them, and the cycle repeats until it explodes and nobody is there. We used Lust on the second shield because we still had Vault Integrity left, right? She'll phase at 0% Vault Integrity. This is where you want to pump all of the damage you can to the boss and get her as low as possible, because the less health she has, the less stuff you're going to have to deal with in phase 3. You can see right there, like I was talking about defenses for hunters earlier, it's very important that you don't use all your defensives at once, like I just did. I used Survival of the Fittest on top of Aspect of the Turtle, which was wicked overkill. You're going to want to use your health stones. You'll see me do it right here. I've already used my Exhilaration and Aspect of the Bear. The only thing I have left is the heal from my pet, because I got a Spirit Beast pet. That is not a big heal whatsoever. It will not save your life, but it will buy you some time to get closer to a healer so they can save your life. So right here, we were a little far away from our group that we were supposed to be with. Took a lot of damage right there. Now, she'll do this mechanic as long as the Vault Integrity is up. So you're going to have to deal with these until it reaches 0, and then she'll phase into phase 2.5. In this phase, it's very important that you put markers down on either side of this ad. You see we have a purple diamond and a green triangle. What that's going to do is give your raid a point of reference to stand near each ad, because as I said before, the breath tries to target the largest amount of people to do the most damage. So if you guys are in a straight line on opposite ends, she will breathe her damaging breath onto those players. These Storm Fiends have an ability called Storm Break, where they spawn these little ads and teleport to the opposite side. So you guys will switch ads mid-fight. So try to keep them at an equal amount of health. Now, if the ads get to the other large ad, they will give it a haste, a damage buff, and it will heal the large ad. So you're going to want to use, Binding Shot, Tar Trap, stagger your slows and AoE, CC, and stuns as long as you can in order not to overlap with anybody else using them. Plan those out before that phase. This is the third phase, which is the final phase of the fight. She casts this ability called Raging Storm, which is the material that drops from the puddles in phase 1, except it's a big ring around the platform that slowly shrinks in onto the raid. So this is the DPS check. This is where you need to go hard in the paint, get as much damage out as possible, use every cooldown imaginable to man, while still dealing with these mechanics. Like the one that just happened is Magnetic Charge. It's a bomb that gets put on one player, and you will all be teleported to that player when it explodes. As you saw there, a breath goes out at the same time. You are going to want to start running to the side closer to the magnetic charge when the breath goes off, because otherwise you'll get pulled through the breath like I almost did. And as you saw there, I got the circle twice. I got the debuff on me. That does a lot of dot damage to you. So I turtled it, used all my healing cooldowns. Still have survival of the fittest left to deal with something that's coming up that I should have popped, but I didn't. Popped it too late. You She'll cast an ability called Electrified Scales on certain people in the raid. It's random. If you get it, it does a heavy amount of damage. It just stacked at the same time she was doing the pushback. Not much anybody could do about that. So I got. She'll also do a attack on the tank that does a lot of damage to anybody in front of her. It's not just focused on the tank. So you're going to want to be on the opposite side that your tank is on all of the time. If you find yourself running remotely close to the tank, get away from it because you will die. If you get the large blue circles later in the fight, you're just going to have to sacrifice yourself for the raid and run as far away as you can in order not to spread that stuff to the raid and make it a complete wipe. We had pulled this boss, I would say, I think it was 145 times before we actually beat it. We started pulling, we were all at like 380, 390 item level, which is not ideal. Your item level, especially for a hunter, you're going to want to be 400 minimum for this fight. I mean, you can be high or lower depending on your raid comp and, you know, who you have in the raid with you. But 400 is a good spot to be at. You're going to want to stagger your cooldowns. Remember to use your health stones, health potions. Your talented healing abilities like Exhilaration and Fortitude of the Bear, your Spirit Beast ability, all of those things are going to help you get through the fight and make it a lot easier on your healers and on yourself, be a lot less stressful. The mechanics are not that hard once you get them down. Just pay attention to the breath on ad phase 2.5 and make sure you're out of the way because it's a lot wider than what the beam is. You get the circles, run them out. Just pay attention to what's going on around you, especially in the sparks phase. You're going to need 2 interrupts, 1 for each spark, but you're going to want to take more than that in case somebody can't get theirs and you're close, or for the ads on phase 1.5 that you need to interrupt the Stormseeker Acolytes. This is my Beast Mastery Guide to Heroic Razsageth. I hope you enjoyed it. We're going to start a Mythic progression next week, and hopefully I will put out another guide dealing with all those fights. Probably 1 guide per boss. If you guys have any comments or questions, I'll try to do my best to answer them. Just leave a comment or you can message me directly. And happy raiding.